Okay, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts, but of course, if you follow along, you already know that. Anyway, all right, so really special episode this week, and this is actually based on a viewer request. So I really appreciate when you guys interact with things, not the trolls who are flaming things, because that just makes me laugh, but those of you who are trying to learn things. Had a really good conversation with a new friend from Israel yesterday who has been learning a lot from these things, which is awesome. So anyway, what we're going to be taking a look at, the topic that our viewer tossed out there was this idea of fighting like the wind. What the hell does that mean, right? Funo kata is the way I learned it in Japanese. And so what does that mean, right? Fighting like the wind, right? Because there's a bunch of different perspectives on whether this is even a thing or not or whatever, okay? So I'm going to get into that in just a bit here, but let me just start by saying that Hatsumi Sensei has always said that Budo, right, real martial arts, real combat, training for that kind of thing, right, real Budo, Ninjutsu, right, is like life, right? It's not just like life, it's an aspect of life, right? And one of the things that I help my students do is to get a handle on this little corner of life, this little part or aspect of life, so that they can get on with, they get this conflict management, this ability to handle danger and whatnot. They get this stuff handled. Now they can live more stress-free. They don't get into pissing matches with people. And you can get on with building the life that they really want to be living because they've got the skill sets necessary to protect that life from anything that might harm it, themselves being one of them, all right? So, but it's like life, okay? And the thing about life is that those who have the most tools, the most options, right? The greatest level of adaptability, right, have the greatest chance for not only survival, right, but also for success, right? There's this big thing in our Gyoko school. There's this 3-in-1, 1-in-3 principle, and this number 3 runs through things quite a bit. In the Sagagi Yoshinryu, the goal is to lock up 3 lines of balance, either at the same time or 1, 2, 3 very quickly, right? Because it jams them up. Being able to see at least 3 aspects of the same technique, or to be able to break it into 3 parts that you can work on individually. Then ultimately you can break that into 3 and whatnot, right? There's this other thing with 1 and 3 I'll talk about later. But the ability to have options, right? The ability to see things, the more options we have. I can't remember where I learned this one. It may not have been from one of my Ninpo teachers, but there was a breakdown for like options, right? When people are explaining things, you ever hear somebody say, I didn't have a choice, man. What could I do, right? And what they did was they equated it with numbers. And it may have been Hatsumi Sensei. It's kind of poking at my mind at the moment, but nobody has no options. Nobody has 0 options. Okay. Anybody that has 0 options is dead. Okay. They're the only people that have no options. Okay. What most people mean is they only had 1 option, right? But did you really? Okay. Because actually, I think most people start with at least 2, because most people think of, I have to choose A or choose B. So whatever. Okay. But not choosing to not choose is an option, okay? But so if I have only 1 option, then I'm a slave, right? Whether it's a slave to my own belief system, limitations, or the relationship I'm in is a one-way, my way or the highway kind of thing, and it's not my way, right? That's not how I operate. But anyway, if I only have 2 options, then I have a dilemma, right? In which case a warrior just picks one, because most people get stuck because of 1 or 2 things. They're either not sure which one to pick because they both seem like they're equally good or equally bad, in which case fucking pick one, right? You'll know within the first couple of seconds whether or not that was the right one, and you can carry on, or whether you need to switch and go try the other one, right? Or they can't pick because they're afraid of being wrong, in which case warriorship is non-existent. Okay, it's only when you have 3 or more options in any given situation do you approach freedom. Do you approach the ability to take control of things and steer better, right? So everything starts at 3. Okay, so again, Takagi Yoshin, minimum 3 lines of balance, those kind of things, right? When you're doing Conceptualization, right, the body comes, the joint systems are laid out in 3s, right? We have a ball and socket joint connected to a hinge joint, connected to a universal joint. To attack any one joint, we have to have control of the other 2 joints in the system, which is why people have a hell of a time doing wrist reversals or whatever, because they let the person have their shoulder and their elbow, right? So it takes a long time for that wrist to lock up, right? This stuff is in there all over the place, right? In Konsetsu Waza, you want to lock 3 lines, 3 counter oppositional lines, right? That way the person truly is locked up, right? Just locking one line, he just moves in that direction, and eventually he'll outwalk your pressure, or you have to chase him like a puppy dog looking for a bone, right? But if I have this locked and I have the shoulder locked in a different direction, then he can't get out of all of them, right? Because the brain can't figure out, right? And if it does, anything that it tries, the other 2 backfire on it, right? Really cool stuff. Anyway, so like life, okay? So, but what tends to happen in the martial arts, especially today's world, right, is that what used to be different systems, right? Vyuha, whatever you want to call them, right? What used to be different systems designed to have secrets or specializations, okay, for handling different types of attacks, right? Very few of them were specialized to just one thing. Okay? That's why you see pictures of samurai. They've got yumi ya, they've got a bow and arrows in a quiver. They're carrying a spear or a naginata. They've got a shit ton of swords in their belt, right? They've got rope hanging off of them and all that kind of stuff, because right, that you don't know what you're going to run into. Okay, so what started out as being different systems, all designed and having their own little secrets and nuances for handling many different types of attacks, anything that could occur, right? What that's turned into is they've become systems, styles, right? Where one chooses one way of fighting, right? Or one type of fight category to get into. And I know everybody's going to argue about the MMA and all that kind of stuff. And it's gotten, that was kind of a resurgence of bringing things together, because for decades people ran around, they learned like a punching kicking style, and then they were like, shit, what if like somebody grabs me? Oh, I better go learn throws, and I better go learn joints and joint locks and whatnot. So you can kind of bring these things together. But you can watch any fight, right? If you're watching boxing, you're watching people box, right? There's very little variation. But if you're watching MMA, you can still, just like Bruce Lee would point out, and I would point out about Bruce Lee, is you can see somebody's core specialization, okay? And that's where they feel most comfortable. Will they do the other things? Yeah, but they're not so strong there, okay? Bruce Lee, right? You can see his Chin Na and Wing Chun foundations in just about everything that he does, all the way through his Jeet Kune Do. Even though it was supposed to be highly adaptive, you can still see the roots right there, okay? Anyway, so again, they choose the kind of fight categories, or they choose this one style, and then they sit back and like to tell everybody else that anything that is different from what they're doing, right, or the kind of fights they get into is wrong, and that's not realistic, and nobody does that shit. Okay, so but that would be that kind of mentality. If we brought that over into life, right, that'd be like only ever sitting in one type of chair. Can you imagine? Go to a friend's house, they don't have that particular style of chair, so you're either going to sit in what they have and bitch and complain, or you're not going to be comfortable, or you won't sit down because that's not my type of chair. Or who the hell would ever sit in a chair like that? We hear people say shit like this all the time. Maybe not about chairs, right? But this ego battle, right? Or it'd be like only knowing one route from home to work every day, and then there's an accident or road construction or whatever, and you have to detour, and you're just absolutely freaking disoriented, or you can't function because anything that deviates off that path, you're lost. It's that kind of thing, right? So survival and success are the same in that they both require the ability to adapt, right? And to have more than one way to do things, right? More than one way to get something done in order to achieve whatever goal we're after, okay? So, you know, if I only ever have, you know, one job and I get fired from that job, and then I'm like, well, they won't hire me back, so how do I make money? Well, there's always welfare. However, but it just, this kind of thinking really limits people, and it permeates the martial arts and the self-defense world, because people make, it's called anchoring bias, right? The way they were introduced to something, anything, right? And this is part of the enlightenment process, getting over this shit, knowing that our brains are wired for this kind of thing, and then to be able to get over it so that we can function more effectively, right? Anchoring bias is the way we were introduced to something, right? Ego attaches itself to that as the thing. It's the only right way. It's the thing by which everything else is gauged, measured, compared, everything, right? Okay. It's kind of like, I don't know, you become aware of your feet early on, and then you just judge everybody else's feet based on yours. Well, what if you don't know that your feet are the ugly ones and everybody else is not? I hate feet, by the way, but anyway, right? So another example relative to our academy here is we used to hang up flyers, right, to get leads, to get new prospective students calling the dojo or walking in or whatever, right? And it was a little time intensive, right? But we had a long list of community bulletin boards within the 3 towns that are closest to the academy, right? So a little time intensive, but it worked like a charm, okay? Then, okay? And then it didn't, right? And now there's little to no return on the amount of time, effort, money, whatever, printing, driving the shit around, trying to hang it up. And the places that still have bulletin boards, I wouldn't hang my flyers there even if they had 100 people a day walking past it, right? Because that board and the surrounding environment becomes a part of my marketing message, okay? So they haven't, it's paint peeling and the bulletin board looks like it's falling apart and there's shit hanging off of it, and it looks like it's, you know, it's put up in the 1930s or whatever, then it doesn't matter what my flyer looks like. When it goes up against that, it speaks volumes, okay? Because now that surrounding becomes a part of that layout and that message. And there's this unspoken assumption by especially the high-end thinkers that I'm trying to attract. And that is, he obviously doesn't give a shit that this area makes the fly. So how disciplined could this guy be? How attentive to detail, how strategic? They may not use those words, but right? Or he frequents this place like this. Okay? But the reality is that most of the bulletin boards that were on the list that we had for that system that we used, they don't exist anymore. So, right? But there's still a lot of schools still doing the same shit they did, you know, forever and a day, and then complaining because nobody calls, nobody stops in, whatever. Well, if what you're doing isn't producing results, you got to do something else. I know it sounds like it's duh, but anyway, right? So again, now I use the internet. I run Facebook ads, I publish articles and do things like this and whatnot. And this is to reach people better and more consistently, and attract the kind of people that are looking for this kind of information anyway, right? But again, it's still not the only thing that I do, because if it were, and I don't know if you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook or anything like that. If those platforms shut down, now what? Right? So anyway, all right. So before we completely jump into this thing, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, that kind of thing. I should have probably led off with what the topic was. I'm sorry, I was remiss. Right? I guess I did. Right? Fighting like the wind. So what we're really doing with this lesson is we're going to look inside the ninja's funo kata, right? Wind mode. Now, fu, right? And fu means wind. Kata, people get attached to kata as like form or whatever, but kata can mean example. It can mean or it can imply mode or methodology, those kind of things, right? So we're going to get to that thing, all right? So let's talk about the wind that we're supposed to be fighting like, right? I learned about these elements like from the earliest days of my training, okay? And I've also heard students ask Hatsumi Sensei what a wind technique was or what it would look like. And a couple of times he just kind of leaned over and then made some kind of noise like he was farting, right? It's funny, right? Okay. But now that we've appeased the people who think this is bullshit anyway, now we can get on with training, okay? So let's see. Sorry, in my notes here. Okay, so I'll come back to this wind technique idea in a minute, right? Like what's a wind technique? Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. But for now, let's take a quick look at these elements, okay? These 5 elements, there's actually 6, right? They come from our Mikyo training in Ninpo Mikyo, this mind science and stuff that kind of blended in and got woven in a lot of these systems, right? So the Godai 5 elements, right? Chi, Sui, Ka, or Hi, Fu, and Ku. Earth, water, fire, wind, and void. The 6th element, Rokudai, the 6th element in Japanese is Shita, in Sanskrit it's Chitta, right? It's mind, okay? Because we human beings can make shit up. Anyway, right? It's mind, okay? So what we're really looking at here is a way to classify or catalog or to recognize similarities and whatnot within life, right? So instead of bringing things out into 3 different aspects, like in the Gyoko school, right? In Mikyo, we break it out into 5 or 6. And then this becomes a symbolic label for describing certain things, certain aspects, certain types of tactics, a way to group things or ideas by similarities, that kind of thing, right? So in class, I can just say, okay, look, this is wind, right? Okay, you know wind. Yeah, okay, I know wind. Okay, good. So you're way too heavy, man. You're way too earth-like, or you're way too water-like. That's just very, very short and to the point. And instead of me saying, dude, you're not being adaptive enough. You're not light on your feet. You're not. And I list off all of these things, and then I say, right now you're being too, and then I list all of these things that are the opposite. Holy shit, right? That would take freaking forever. Class isn't that long, okay? So it's a quick way to organize things by strategy, by tactic, by that kind of thing, right? The human body itself, or the human system itself, is made up of these elements, right? Chi, or earth, is symbolic of the bones, the muscles, the hard, firm, or solid parts of our system, right? Including the vascular system, the nerves themselves, whatnot. We're talking about the form, right? Sui, water, right? This is the fluids within the body, right? It's blood, it's the plasma, it's whatever's running through the veins and whatnot. The urine that we produce that we have to get rid of, and the water in the cells, all that kind of stuff, right? Ka, or Hi, fire, is the metabolism, right? And people will often throw that word around. Okay, you got to bring up your metabolism. What kind? Am I bringing up my muscular metabolism, my respiratory metabolism? What kind of metabolism am I bringing up? Because if I drink more water than my body's normally accustomed to, it has to metabolize, work with, and utilize that extra water, right? If I do deep breathing exercises and I breathe more oxygen in and get rid of more carbon dioxide than I normally do on a regular basis, I adopt some deep breathing exercises, right, and oversaturate the body with oxygen, the body has to metabolize the oxygen, right? So anyway, right? Fu, wind, this is our respiration. It's the gases that the body takes in, lets go of, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, all that kind of stuff, right? And ku, void, this is our ability to think and communicate, okay? And well, how's that different from mind? Mind, Shita, is more of a subconscious, unconscious kind of thing. It's our belief systems, perspectives that are actually ruling the day and conditioning the thoughts and the way we speak and those kind of things. Okay, so but these things are symbolic of, okay, things, and it's easier to categorize them, right? So an analogy that I give my students way early on is like a 5-drawered filing cabinet, okay, 5-drawered filing cabinet, right? So we might have, right, earth, water, fire, wind, void. We might have a label, right? Have you ever seen a filing cabinet? They're going the way of the dodo, just like phones. Anyway, it might have this little label on the front, and it's labeled with these things. But inside each drawer, there's a whole bunch of files or those file envelopes. Okay. So we might have one that's marked water collection or water collection and purification, something like that, right? We might have one marked as Taisabaki, right? Taisabaki, like evasion kind of stuff. We might have one listed as it's another good one. Let's just pick another one from survival, right? Fire building or fire lighting. Okay, fire lighting. Now, there's going to be a whole bunch of these things, right? But there's one of these in every single drawer. And then what goes in that file folder are the earth methods for, let's say, fire lighting, right? That's the battery and steel wool method, or battery and really thin wire to get the fire going, right? In the water thing here, that's going to be focusing sunlight either through a magnifying glass, or you've made a makeshift magnifying glass for when you don't have one. I put a drop of water or sweat on the lens of my glasses, and I create this double convex lens, right? So I can filter it. If I don't have that, I grab a leaf and I poke a hole in it, just a small one with a pen or anything that I have, right? Just a small hole, and then I put a drop of water on top of that, and now I've created a natural magnifying glass, those kind of things, right? So that's going to have those things in there, right? Fire is going to have the flint and steel method in there. The wind one is going to have the bow and drill or the stick method, right? For getting that thing to spin. Void is going to be like magnesium or some kind of chemical process. Okay. Same thing with Taisabaki. There's going to be one of these in here for each of those, right? There's going to be how to block a punch, how to whatever. Right. Same thing with water collection. Okay. So what we're doing is we're cataloging the different ways to do this. So instead of just having a fucking mess of notes about all these ways to do it, we can just classify it. So if I'm short on energy, especially in a survival situation where I might be doing water collection or fire building or that kind of thing, right? I'm short on energy. I'm exhausted. There was trauma. I'm injured, whatever. I'm going to need to pick a method that requires little to no effort or energy. Okay. So this earth method of just kind of rigging up a wire, running through my setup, tap it with a battery, let it go, right? The more energy I have, the more I might be involved in, but the rule of survival is also energy conservation. So that's just as true for wilderness survival stuff as it is in a fight situation. Okay, and while we do, there is an amount of effort that has to be applied. Way too many people have gotten used to fighting mano a mano and not had, like in a sport context, and they don't have to worry about somebody else or 2 other or 3 other friends jumping their ass after they beat their opponent into the ground and they're celebrating their win, right? They can put everything into it and be absolutely wiped at the end of that fight. But in a survival situation, I need to end this thing quickly because I don't know what else is coming. Okay, so the mindset is very, very different. Okay, so again, the file cabinet, you'd have one for each of these, and then that's how things get classified, right? but sensei, are there really such things as wind techniques or fire techniques? I'll get there, right? Just cool your jets, right? So, so again, they're a way to classify things, aspects, tactics, group things by similarity, that kind of thing, right? So it's the same with this wind element, right? It's a way to use one code word symbolically or to symbolically point to aspects, principles, concepts, or whatever within a given realm or with like characteristics. Okay, we can actually classify martial arts and self-defense systems, fight styles, right, using the same model. Okay, so think of a martial arts, sport or otherwise, right? That's very earth-like. Okay, I'm going to pick. I'm just going to pick sumo. Okay, big guys, can't move very much. The limbs go, pretty fast and whatnot, but they themselves, no. Okay. See, water, right? This is in the context of the world, right? This guy here, not moving very much, or they're using strength and leverage to do the work. This guy here is using flow and trickiness and that kind of adaptability and whatnot to trick the other person to get him to go one way so they can catch him another one, right? So here I'm going to put judo, because if you've ever watched a judo match, that's what there is. There's a bunch of tugging and pushing and pulling where they're trying to set the other guy up to counter what they're doing, and then they can take that away from them or exacerbate it, right? Make it worse, and then catch him for the throw or whatever, right? Kahi, fire, right? That's that go in there, get him kind of thing, right? So karate, taekwondo, right? That kind of thing. Taekwondo, okay? Fu, wind, adaptability, a lot of circle kind of stuff like small and large circle, jujitsu, evasion, and then catching the person and sending them on their way, right? Aikido, not Aikido. Aikido, right? And then void is those people who are mixing and matching and things like that. As an example of this void down here, void is when things start to cross over. And I don't mean that you're mixing judo with Aikido. You're mixing the principles and concepts, and you could switch gears. Okay, so I'm going to write something down here. How about Roman Greco wrestling? Right, the basis for high school wrestling. Okay, so these guys, I never got. I took it in gym class, but never quite got the idea of getting down on all fours and having somebody else mount me. But hey, that's just me, or me mounting some other guy. Again, not me. But anyway, right, what we're looking at here is they're into this wrestling kind of thing, and they're trying to use leverage and muscle and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, they'll like flip into a new position to try to off the person and stuff, right? So you've got this mixture of like a sumo manhandling kind of thing, and then all of a sudden there's a quick adjustment to a new position, which could be very Aikido-like or very Judo-like, right? Now, but there's also, see, and here's where the life comes in, right? All martial arts, all fight skills, all of life, just like our systems, have all of these at the same time, okay? So in the context of fight strategy, which I'm going to talk about when we get over here to this other side, fight strategy, what we're talking about here is holding your ground. Not backing down. This is my spot. Okay? Or if you're in law enforcement, security, you know what this is like. Calm the hell down. Calm down. No, calm down. Sit down. Okay? Well, those people are assholes. I don't care. Okay? Your dad did it. You did it if you're a dad, whatever. And if you didn't, you're lucky if your kids aren't monkeys that just run up the walls and bite the curtains. Right? So the water approach here, right, is use of like defensive angling, right? It's drawing them out. Yes, there's flow, that kind of thing, right? So this is stability, right? Balance and stability. This one is flow and adapting to whatever they're doing, right? Ka or fire, right, is this go for it. Like what I mean by this is when I have to move, you move. Okay. You don't get around to getting ready for it, right? There's no wind up, there's no tells, you move. Okay. There's no prep. Okay. The way I kind of explain things to people, if I were using a bow and arrow analogy, right? Earth is I'm holding the arrow and I'm stabbing the shit out of the person. Okay. In water, I'm walking around with the bow and the arrow is knocked, but when I find my target, I draw to create power and then let go. In fire, I have the arrow knocked, but the bow's already drawn, and all I have to do is let go. Okay. Wind has a sense of carefree, right? It's hard to pin down. It's very light, and somebody that has a wind type personality, they're like, yeah, whatever, man. I don't care. Okay? That kind of thing pisses us A personality types off. But anyway, right? There's things to not care about, but that's often from that perspective, that type of personality. That's usually a justification for laziness or just don't give a shit. Okay. And then they go around complaining because like people chose the wrong person for president or they chose the wrong meal for dinner or whatever. You said you didn't care. If you don't care, shut the fuck up. That means you're okay with anything that happens. But see, people don't do that, right? Because again, they might be afraid of choosing because people might be upset at them because they chose wrong. Anyway, I'm an asshole. So food, right? Carefree. Again, think about the wind, right? It's like it can change course, it can shift, right? It's ever changing, that kind of thing, right? And again, void is any of these that's necessary in the moment or a combination of all of them. So every technique, virtually every technique, has every single one of these things in it. There's stability, so you don't fall down, right? Your strikes have solidity to them, your techniques, they're not wishy-washy, that kind of thing. There's a flow to what you're doing, this back and forth thing with him. There's a coordination between your limbs and the rest of the body, right? There's this sense of fire, let's get this shit over with, right? And then there's also this openness to change and adaptability, right? Whatever you do is okay with me, dude. I got a technique waiting for you. And then this ability to think and communicate on the fly and not being nailed down. But that's not what tends to happen. What tends to happen in the modern martial arts world, and then that crosses over to street fighting, right? Is people pick one based on personality type, based on the build of their body, based on past successes, based on what their brother's girlfriend's cousin's roommate Bob said was the best martial art or whatever, and then they gravitate toward that kind of stuff, right? Or that's the first thing they saw, they thought it was cool, and ta-da, right? Well, that's the best, okay? Well, you know what? For some people, and I've learned that having a martial arts school, for some people, ego justifies best out of a condition that had nothing to do with research, trying to figure out what the problems were that I would have to deal with, and then finding a system that provided training across those realms, right? For a lot of people, right? They signed up for a school, right? The school, because it was a convenient distance in between work and home, or home and the grocery store 2 nights a week or whatever. And then that school was teaching a certain style. And now here they are arguing the superiority of that style when the fact is they got involved with that martial art because it was random. It was based on convenience, not research, not applicability to solving a problem. That's why some of us will travel halfway around the planet or drive 9 hours one way or whatever to get with a teacher or to study something that is absolutely applicable. And other people will get online, social media, or send emails and piss, whine, moan, and complain because the teacher won't move to their town and set up a dojo. Why the hell would I do that? Some guy wanted me to move to Portland, Oregon. I live in Sunbury, Pennsylvania, which is an hour north of Harrisburg, which is 4 hours west of Pittsburgh and 2.5, I'm sorry, east of Pittsburgh and 2.5 west and north of Philadelphia, to put it in context, right? I'm a little, if you look at a map, I'm a little beside New York City. So anyway, right? Wanted me to come out to Portland, Oregon, and live in his one-room apartment and teach him, wait for it, for free. Some people have some balls. That's where I'm going to stop that conversation, right? So you understand, Sensei, I don't have the money for things. You fucking figure it out like the rest of us do. That's called being a grown-up and a warrior, for God's sake, right? People want to be a ninja, but they have no problem-solving skills whatsoever. That's just... Anyway, all right, so I'm going to stop laughing at people. All right, so let's see what else I have in my notes for you here. So again, we can classify them, but again, let's focus on the wind element. All right, so let me put something in here before I run through the rest of this and forget to say it, right? One of the problems in this realm is that some people just absolutely dismiss it because they heard something Hatsumi Sensei say, but they didn't understand that his answer was relative to the question. Sensei, can you give me an example of a wind technique? Height. Okay? It's fucking funny, right? Okay? Because there's no such thing as a wind technique. There's no such thing as an earth technique. There's no such thing as a water technique. The techniques that students get in curricula like mine or one of my teachers and whatnot, what we have are groups of principles and concepts that are classified this way. So it's a mode of operation that they're learning how to do, and they're learning it against a certain attacker type, right? And so my curriculum is split up into 5 modules, and so each module focuses on one of these things. But that doesn't mean that the techniques don't have elements of the other things. What we've divided things up into are strategic modes of operation. So one whole block of study is about getting in there and taking the fight to them, when that's a good idea. But see, there's a whole bunch of people that put all their time, effort, and money on just doing that thing, and some die, right? We have a whole block of study on this guy's coming in at you and whatnot, and you need time and you need space, right? Stretch him out, break his strength and speed advantage, right? Draw up some power and slam that back, right? So we've got this whole module where we work on that. There's a whole module, we just stop them in the tracks and we use attacks to pressure points and leverage and those kind of things. Got a whole other one here where it's this fighting like the wind. But it's divided by strategic response. And the students get a chance to match that up with emotional states. Like, I don't have anything to do with this thing. No, I don't want any trouble. Okay, well, by this classification system, you're already in a win state. If you don't want to have anything to do with things, what do? You throw your arms up, you walk away, you leave the conversation, right? This guy comes in, you get the hell out of the way. I mean, your body speaks what your words do. I don't have anything to do. Okay? This, strike you down with the power of heaven. Boom, and you just go, right? So the body, the mind, the spirit all kind of match up on this kind of thing. Anyway, all right, so what I want to do is I want to look at 6 factors, aspects, perspectives. I'm calling it appearances because it's what it looks like, or it's what you see as an option. Okay, so each of these things that I'm going to lay out could be a standalone approach. They're all going to be wind, right? Could be a standalone approach. Any one of these things could be how we define fighting like the wind, right? But, right, chances are we're going to be using 2 or 3, and the higher you go in rank and the deeper your understanding, the more you understand how these things kind of happen at different times in different places, in different groups or relationships or whatever, right? And I know for a lot of people, they just want to know where to put their damn foot, in which case this is not the training for them, okay? Or at least not yet, okay? So You just want to know where to put your foot? I'm going to go put your foot right there. And then when you try to get out of the way, you put your foot there, but he changed his punch and you got hit anyway. But you said, shit, I can tell you to put your foot anywhere on the floor. Okay? Until you develop the ability to assess the situation. Sensei, he's throwing a straight punch, a lunge punch that's way deep in here, and I can't back up fast enough or farther enough. What do? Okay, move off at this naname angle. Okay, right? So do I move 30% or 30 degrees, 45 degrees? What's your belt color? Okay, yellow, you're in mod 1. Okay, so you're brand new. Move at about 45 degrees. Okay, what do you mean because I'm there? Well, because true Tai Sabaki, there is no degree. It's moving to the angle that causes you to be angled to the line of the attack, profile to him, closing off all your targets and opening up all of his at the exact same time. It's not just evasion. Okay. Anyway, that being said, let's just move on. Right. So, all right. So, as a physical strategy, let's just call this a physical. Okay, a physical strategy. All right. So, as a physical strategy, wind is turning on a spinal axis. Okay, it's moving the torso this way. Okay, so earth is up down, right? You're holding your ground, so you're sinking and getting heavy. Right? Water is side side. Okay, because from an emotional state, and it's based on the way muscles fire in your torso and lock up your spine in certain places, release other ones. A lot of people know them as chakra. It's not about this woo-woo thing. It's these natural flex points in the spinal column, right? And so when certain things lock up, I can't move forward and back very fast. That's why people do this, okay? Because they can't move their legs very well because their spine's locked up in certain ways. But side to side is easy, right? Well, Sensei, we don't move like that. Yeah, I know. We move side to side away from him and into him. See, people say I'm backing up and I'm going backward and forward. No, you're not. Backward and forward is this way. Okay? We profile our body so that under that pressure, side-side movement is very, very easy. Okay? Fire, that's front back. That's out and in, right? Void is thinking and communicating. That's me going, you really don't want to do this. Okay? And if you do, you still might win, right? I'm fat, old, and bald. But I promise you will remember my goddamn name for the rest of your life. That's a promise. Okay? So you may win, however. Okay? So physical strategy is, okay, he's trying to apply pressure this way. I circumvent that. I break off that line. Okay? In the military, well, I'll talk about that in the next one. Okay? All right. So in the next one, this is a tactical approach, I use the same term as strategy, but I see tactics and strategies as different things. But a tactical strategy here. So what I'm doing is I'm using evasion. I'm using avoidance. Okay. So I am using a flanking maneuver. Okay. Another way to talk about the tactical aspect, which people need to break away. They don't break away from the kata. There's a bridge between doing randori or whatever the hell you want and doing the form, right? And that is starting everything off, moving, so your uke has to hit you on the fly while you're moving, okay? So as a tactical strategy, right, from a wind element idea, I'm staying in motion, right? And I'm not giving a stationary or a barely moving target, like we're both fighting like this, okay? And then I'm gonna hope that this keeps me from getting punched in the freaking skull. Okay, so I stay in motion, so he has to try to track and hit a moving target. Okay, that's wind, right? Wind has an element of chaos to it, randomness, right? Not being predictable, not staying in one place, right? So there is a psycho-emotional, I know, big terms. Okay, psycho-emotional aspect to it, which is, I already talked about this one, it's carefree. But fighting like the wind is, I don't want to, no, okay? I don't want any trouble, okay? So it's wanting to get out of there, not, oh yeah, well, fucker, let's go. Okay. That's this guy. Okay. So some people can't help themselves. But the trick with these, and the way I was taught, is human beings left to their own devices will naturally gravitate to whatever they already do or wherever they already feel comfortable. But, right, to master this and to have a sense of strategic flexibility, we need to be adept at all of these, and the ability to either, we end up there accidentally, right? We recognize that we're in a certain emotional state, which is one of the definitions for kami, right? Being aware of your condition, and then adapting or adopting the techniques and strategies from that realm, because I know how to operate when I'm under that stressor, right? Or we develop these as strategic options. So if I'm working one and it doesn't work because he's beating that one, I switch to another one. He beats that one, I switch to another. Most people can switch maybe once, maybe. Most people are good at one thing and they don't have a backup, right? If they try a backup, shit falls apart. Some people can switch to a backup, like the punchers and kickers can switch to kind of grappling or tackling or pinning or whatever, right? Very few people, right? And this is the ability to change 5 times. Within the Bujinkan, just the schools that Hasumi Sensei had soke-ship of, we were taught the ability to change 9 times. But that doesn't count the other Koryu, like Ito-ryu and Musashi-ryu and all that were involved as well, okay? So anyway, all right, so psycho-emotional, do I have that right? Da, da, da. Okay, so next one is conceptualization. Conceptualization, right? Conceptualization is that part of your mind that is able to make something that didn't exist before, whether it's a fictional story, a lie, right? An invention, whatever. You're making something that didn't exist before, but you're making it out of things that you already know, okay? So we learn all these techniques and we learn all these skills, but ultimately we're gonna have to make shit up on the fly against the unique attack that's coming at us, okay? So it's the, again, the ability to kind of mix and match your stuff so that they can go, right? You're gonna end up at the end of that whole fight or that attack, if somebody recorded it, you will be able to recognize things that you have done, but never that way entirely, okay? So conceptualization is the ability to adapt and create a solution when you don't have a set one in place, but you know enough that you can borrow pieces and put it together, okay? Also known as like variations, that kind of thing, henka, right? Next one, social orientation. Social, I'm going to call this for social response. Okay, social response. What the hell is that? Okay, well, wind is definitive of the realm of the warrior. Wind is symbolic of self-sacrifice, right? I am willing to dedicate my time, effort, money, or whatever to something bigger than me, whether it's the church and God, whether it's my kids, whether it's as a police officer or a firefighter. Like, we don't have any paid firefighters around here. Every fire department we have a lot of them, right? They're all volunteer. These people are all willing to die, if necessary, to save a stranger's life or a stranger's kid's life or a stranger's dog, okay? That's wind. That's warriorship, okay? Just because they're not in a martial arts school doesn't make that not a warrior mentality, okay? So social orientation is self-sacrifice. It's the ability or willingness, right, to put yourself out there. It's protecting strangers or protecting others and not just protecting yourself, those kind of things, right? So this is serving a higher need or a higher ideal, okay? That's also wind, right? So if I'm fighting like the wind, I could be doing every single one of these things and never touch this this approach. I mean, I could be doing that one, but I could be doing any one of these from the idea that I'm protecting somebody else, and at least in part in that defensive moment, I'm still fighting like the wind. Okay, see, people blow off shit, or they talk shit about things or whatever that they have no freaking idea about. Okay, and it's because they don't think very much. They're just, they've assumed themselves God, right? So they're just the opposite of this, right? They're negative Earth. They've assumed themselves God. They've decided what's right, wrong, correct, real, not, and then they just beat the shit out of everybody else through shame, through guilt, physically, whatever, right? They're a damn bully. They're a narcissist, right? Because they have such a limited view of the world, but they assume that they know everything. Okay? The more somebody knows, the more humble they get, because the more they know, there's an old Chinese saying, the more you know what you don't know. Because you just start encountering things that, holy shit, wow, I thought I knew this much and I know that much. But if I can die knowing a little bit more, right? So, and then number 6, I originally just had these 5, and as I was writing out the board, I thought, shit, I forgot one. Okay, there is an attacker's perspective. On what you're doing, the attacker's perspective. Okay, so all these techniques are imbued with this kind of idea. One of these 3 that I'm going to give you. There's that damn 3 again. Okay, that makes this person that's coming at you or trying to nail you, pin you down, whatever, feel like he is fighting the wind. He was not going to use these words, however. Okay, before I describe these 3 things, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about the time that you were at a picnic, at an outing, standing outside. I don't care what season it was or whatever, right? And you could feel the breeze blowing or the wind blowing or whatever, right? You could feel that. Okay, could you grab it? Could you control it? Can you chase it down? No. Okay, at this level, one of the viewpoints is he can feel you, but he can't get at you. Okay, because there are blind spots in the body and the way the body's built. Okay, that if you can move into those spots, he can feel you. You can be operating and doing things to him, but because of the way the body's built, he can't get at you. Okay, this is our 4th dan and above training. The way the Bujinkan promotions were pre Hatsumi Sensei retiring. I don't know what they are now, and I don't care. I know, blasphemy. The way Hatsumi Sensei described Nidan for us, that's what he expects for people at 8th to 9th dan. The requirements are the same. So that's Nidan for us. Remember, we still have the same 15th dans that everybody else has. Okay, so 4th dan would be 10th to 12th dan-ish, 12th to 15th dan, whatever. Okay, so 3 views, right? 1, he can feel you, but he can't grab you, can't get a hold of you. Okay, 2, you're hard to pin down. So you've got that, right, erratic movement and whatnot, and he's just he can't get at you. You're not an easy target. You're not fighting toe to toe where you're willing to take one to get one, and you're an easy target. Okay, and the other one, and I was introduced to this when I was learning how to do Hoko no Kamae. So for those of you who know Hoko no Kamae, right, this way, there's a couple of different ways to do Hoko. In the book Togakure Ryu Ninpo, also known as the Tenshi Jiraku no Maki, also known as the Shidoshi Scroll, whatever. Okay, in there, an alternate name for Hoko that actually changes how you apply it. Okay, our fall camp that's coming up, we're going to be taking a look at this idea where physically you can be looking like you're doing the exact same thing, but in your head and in your heart, the kamae is different. Okay, so Hoko becomes hoi no kamae. Hoi. Okay, hoi means to envelop, to smother, like in the book, I think he uses the term sense around. Okay, what that means is he can feel you everywhere, but he can't pin any one where down. Okay, So the analogy that I got early on when I'm doing Hoyt, I'm still evading, right? This guy's coming in, but instead of flanking, where now I'm beside him right here, I'm going to hook all the way behind him, okay? Or the techniques that I'm applying, right? The analogy is the attacker is like a man on fire, and you're like a wet blanket that's being thrown around him to extinguish the fire, smother it, cut off oxygen and the stuff that the fire needs, and pin him down. Okay, so I know, really conceptual, right? But Hatsumi Sensei has always been big on giving you a way to think about something and then having you go train based on that viewpoint, that perspective, that feeling, that scenario, that different variable, right? And I mean, if somebody's short in this department where they can't conceptualize that thing, then their techniques, everything's going to always look the same because they're style-based, okay? And they're always going to operate based on that same sense of comfort, right? Anyway, so I appreciate the thing. I'll post the thank you to the viewer. All I have is a handle. I don't know the actual person's name, but I'll post that down in the description, kind of stuff, just to make sure they get credit for this. I really always appreciate when somebody sends in a question like this. Okay, so Funokata, right? Fighting like the wind. When I said in the beginning, what the hell does that mean? Okay, well, there's a base fundamental idea, right, of primarily using evasion, avoidance tactics, those kind of things, right? This physical strategy where I'm flanking him. He's coming in and I slip that. I use last second tricky timing, right? I'm kind of like the door in a comedy movie where somebody's about to bash in the door, and just as they're about to hit it, somebody opens the door. It falls in, right? That kind of thing. That's how we want him to feel, okay? That last second kind of thing, right? But how are we applying it? Okay? Ultimately, yes. Okay? But each of these can be explored individually. And then what does this look like compared to these things? And again, in our pre-black belt, pre-Shodan stuff, these are all strategic options. And the way I start people off, they're strategic options based on emotional trigger, what the attacker is making you feel like, or what the situation is making you feel like, and whatnot. And then how do you operate in that state? Okay, so we use words like realm, state, mode, that kind of thing. Okay, so to appease the naysayers, no such thing as a fucking win technique. You're right. Okay, you're absolutely right. Right, and even if there was, the fact that you believe there isn't, reality is reality for you, dude. Okay. So, but there isn't, right? What there are techniques that have certain qualities to them, right? So we can have a technique that movement-wise is very water-like because it stretches them out, breaks their strength, and then at a certain point in there, right, that water thing, just, boom, next thing you know, we're in there, right? It has that as an overriding strategy. But still, right, there's still stability, there's still flow and timing, there's still a sense of direct committed movement without wind up and all that in each move, right? I gotta go, I gotta move now, right? Without being imperative and just throwing shit around, okay? There's always evasion going on, right? And then there's always thinking and communicating, even if it's just physically with our body, right? There's always thinking and processing and assessing and discerning the results of actions or which direction we need to go, right? Because at a certain point in training, I'll round this out with one more thing, like fighting like the wind, okay, that I didn't have over here, okay? So we'll add it as a bonus, okay? Sensory input, okay? Sensory input. Each of your senses, right? Sight, hearing, olfactory, that kind of stuff, right? Are all related to these elements as well in Mikyo, okay? So wind is related to your tactile sense because it's the only sense that covers the entire body. This ear doesn't hear very well in that direction because your skull's in the way. And what you hear when you talk is the vibrations being created on the inside. It's not the same as when you hear yourself from recording, right? Eyes are the earth sense, because you don't have to do very much, right? Anyway, those things don't matter. But at a certain point in your training, fighting like the wind, this is like really in close stuff where they're all over you, or they grabbed you from behind or whatever. You can't use your eyes to see, to make judgments and whatnot, right? So fighting like the wind is using your tactile sense. Your tactile sense becomes your primary sense in a fight, and more important than your eyes, because your eyes are easier to deceive than your tactile sense. You can feel contact, you can feel pressure, you can feel heat, you can feel movement, all kinds of things. Eyes can only process the image in front, and they're easily deceived. Okay, so fighting like the wind can also be just relying primarily on your tactile sense. Okay, so that's one little extra bonus there for you. Hopefully this was valuable, and if not, I don't know why the hell you stayed on for the entire time. Anyway, so normally we have these Friday virtual training things. You'll notice I didn't mention them at all during this this class. It's because as I'm recording this, this is July 3rd of 2024, which means that tomorrow begins our Independence Day festivities, holiday, celebration, whatever, here in the United States. And you'll notice I don't say July 4th celebration, because that wasn't the thing. It was Independence Day is celebrated on July 4th. The way you describe things determines how you operate, right? So the dojo is closed all the way through the weekend because I and staff are taking some time with family and friends and getting some other stuff done. So there will not be classes on this Friday. So what I'm planning on doing, since all of my Friday virtual training things springboard off of Whiteboard Wednesday, we're going to do this next Tuesday. So that is Tuesday, July 9th, I believe, right? So here in a little while, you'll be able to go to this same thing, right? If you're on our email list, and if you are connected to this stuff where you get messages like when I post it on the community section or over on YouTube on my channel, if you get those notifications, then you'll want to perk up. And if you don't, well, then you're going to miss it completely. Because what I'll do is once the page is set up and adjusted for Tuesday, then I'll send the messages out via email and all these other channels. And then if you want to sign up for that class and get some training and some skills based on how a lot of this stuff would work in, it's a 75 to 90 minute class. It's less than $10, and you get the recording as well. So even if you live halfway around the planet and the time zone doesn't match up, you can still get the training, right? But either way, that's what that's what I have for you. I'm going to wrap things up. So by all means, questions, comments, aha moments, topic requests, whatever, post them in the comments on whatever platform you're on. We try to read as many as we can, given our schedules. But that's it. Again, hopefully this was valuable. And if not, I hope it successfully allowed you to get out of work or whatever else you were trying to avoid. Avoidance, wind. Check that.